This episode is brought to you by Amazon Video Games. Visit bit.ly/Amazon Backlog Battle, all one word, when you buy anything with Amazon Prime and save up to 20% on brand new video games. This is the Backlog Battle Podcast, episode 182.
When I think about you, I touch my Vita?
Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of the Backlog Battle Podcast. This is Alex.
And this is Anthony.
How's it going, sir?
It's going. We're back.
Yeah, well,
it's August.
Yeah, it's August. We've always been back, though.
Yeah, we've been back for a couple weeks now.
Yeah.
Couple good weeks.
Exactly. So, speaking of, August, this is the month where you told me that you are going to be picking up a Nintendo Switch. This is pretty exciting. So how is that coming along?
Well, here's the thing. The number one fear is you can't find one, right?
The number one fear. Yeah. Is the Nintendo Switch itself.
But a lot of friends have been telling me that they've been seeing Switches more and more in Walmarts and Best Buys and things like that, just passing by.
Interesting.
So there's been a lot of Switch sightings.
Okay.
As of late. So that begs the question, is that going to be my situation in 2 weeks?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Because
you have advertised a few sales, not on behalf, but behalf of letting me know, but not on behalf of Amazon, that Amazon was carrying Switches.
Yeah, I actually posted that on the Facebook community, and hopefully, some of our listeners actually, were able to take advantage of that, because they were there for a long time.
Yep. And I don't know if that's going to happen. I don't know if I'm going to just be able to pass and see one in the store. I don't know. So that's my major concern in finding a Switch.
Okay.
And you know what? That's one thing, we've talked about Nintendo and how they've, changed in the last year. This is one thing they haven't changed, is the supply and demand bullshit.
Yeah.
Like with the Amiibos, I kind of get it, because that's kind of created a collector's market. I kind of get the Amiibos, and maybe it's partially because it doesn't bother me, because I own one Amiibo and I never sought out to go get more Amiibos.
Right.
You know what I mean? But even at that, it's pretty shitty that they do this every fucking time. The only time I never had difficulty finding a Nintendo console in the last 10 years is with the Wii U.
Yeah.
Because then Wii U sold like shit. But with the Wii, I remember I had to go hunting one. And then now with the Switch, I'm going to have to go fucking hunt one down. I think that's bullshit. And then it gets even more ridiculous when you get in with the NES Mini. And then you heard the whole mess with Walmart and the SNES Mini, right?
Yeah, the SNES Classic. Let's clarify it. It's not called NES Mini. It's not called SNES Mini. It's called the Classic. That's what they call it.
Classic.
Yeah.
You heard about the Walmart thing, though, right?
Oh, yeah. I have a bunch of people that I follow on Twitter who proudly posted that they were able to pre-order the SNES Classic on Walmart, only for Walmart to backpedal and say, yeah, this was our bad. This wasn't really a thing that was supposed to go out this early. We don't really even know, how much we were going to get to begin with. Oh, that was quite a mess.
So how do you feel about that situation? Do you feel that's a Nintendo problem or a Walmart problem?
Well, let's kind of backpedal and kind of examine Nintendo, right? Nintendo isn't as huge as Sony or Microsoft, Like, Sony actually has factories that do manufacture a lot of their products already, right? Like, in terms of their consoles, their controllers, because they got, like, TV lines, they got cell phones. And Microsoft, well, you know, they used to be a software company, but now they're making Xbox Ones. They had a factory for Zunes, if you guys remember that piece of shit.
What was that?
The Zune?
I don't remember the Zune. What the fuck was that?
The Zune was their, like, iPod ripoff.
Oh,
wow!
Fuck.
How easy you forget. I mean,
Well, yeah, but if it was shitty, maybe it was best that I forgot.
Yeah, well, it recently popped up in a Marvel film, which will go nameless because we don't want to go down that rabbit hole. But like, kind of like what I'm saying is, like, Nintendo has to actually partner with people in order to create their products. Like, like, I think they're doing it the smart and economical way for them, but of course, because they don't have control over the supply of their products, really not 100% at least, they don't, they can't really produce as fast as they could, right? And if they just bought a company just to produce their first party stuff, it's kind of like, let me give you a good historical situation. Back in the day, like pre like 1980s and stuff, Disney actually used to create their own paints. Like, they would not buy third-party paints. They would actually mix their own paints. And if you can imagine, that's very expensive. The same goes with Nintendo to a degree, where if they actually, like, manufacture, all the products and assemble it on their own, it's going to be a lot more costly. So
you reminded me of something. I don't mean to interrupt, but you just reminded me of a Nintendo situation like that.
Oh, okay.
I'm sorry. I didn't mean to interrupt you, but do you remember when, you probably don't remember, but Nintendo, you ever heard the story of when Nintendo was launching the NES here in the States, they approached Atari to help distribute and manufacture them, and Atari turned them down?
I've heard that story before. Yeah, I've heard that story.
Yeah. And then they ended up having to produce it themselves because, Atari didn't want to lose more money because of the crash, the video game crash. And then they did that whole Trojan horse thing with Rob the Robot, where they said it was a toy and not a video game. Right. So, yeah, you just reminded me. Sorry for interrupting you.
No. So kind of like applying that same concept, like we talked about this a few, months ago, where the only reason why the Switch isn't being produced as fast as they could is because there's been like an LED shortage, like, in the world, like, in terms of manufacturing LEDs. And their main competition right now is actually Samsung and Apple. So they, so basically, like, the supply chain is dictated by how much, obviously how much money you can shell out for, the supply for your components, right? But also, like, you have to fight, like, other people for said components. I mean, these are resources that are finite. And if there's maybe like 2 or 3 in the world that make it, well, there's gonna be shortages. I mean, also, like, consider that it's, like, even the Vita for a time, right? Like, when it sold for a while, like, it kind of disappeared in the stores a little bit. Maybe, no doubt, because, they're running out of, they were running out of, like, components for their OLED screens.
I gotcha.
So
let me ask you a question about the Vita.
Okay.
Did I remember one of the rare times, if not the only time this happened, when you and I got a console at the same time.
Mm-hmm.
Was the Vita, remember? But I think I got mine a little bit before you. I think I got one of the old pre-launch models. Did you get a pre-launch?
Maybe. I mean, it's obviously, what I got was actually, I want to say, like, I got the first version of the Vita, because I remember us talking about it, and, I was kind of encountering some issues with it and stuff, like, which were just basically, like, the product of OLEDs and stuff, like, just the manufacturing process. So, and it didn't really bother me in the long run. So, I'd still have that same one to this day.
See, I that one, the left stick broke, so I bought another model back in January, because, believe it or not, I still use my Vita a lot, which is testament to, to how dead that system really is. I don't know.
Yeah, it's dead to me. I mean, I can tell you, like, ever since Dissidia got announced for home consoles, I may have booted it up to try Duodecim and realizing how really bad that game is compared to like the new one that they're gonna come out with, you know. So it's like okay, you know, like that was kind of cool, I guess, back in the day. And oh yeah, that's right, this is a PSP game, so it won't look as good. So because I was like thinking like maybe I could get my Dissidia fix for now until like the you know, the closed beta starts like in the summer. Like this is, you know, the tutorial was a piece of shit. Like, it was like a million fucking like tutorials, and I was like, I kind of get the idea, but like in order to fight properly, it just was a pain in the ass. But anyways, that was the last time I touched my Vita.
See, I still touch my Vita a lot because I have the Persona games, and then like last week we talked about 99. Was it last week we talked about 99 Vitas?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's Cross-Buy, and that's a great handheld game.
Mm-hmm.
And I still play Binding of Isaac on there, which I think is great. I mean, I've used my Vita a lot. And to be honest, I use as much as I do my 3DS. Now, the Switch is going to change that equation, obviously, though.
I think so. And that's the thing where I was going to lead into, because that has, like, I think one of the, you know, like one of the better versions of Binding of Isaac, for example. And, you know, Xander from several weeks ago actually brought up that, or actually, no, it wasn't Xander. It was Down Phoenix who brought up Cave Story, and that's actually on there as well. So, I mean,
yeah,
it's such a haven for so many games, and actually Overcooked is there too. You know, like it just came out this week. Actually, like, you know, Overcooked.
That's a perfect game for that console.
Yep,
that's a perfect. I like Overcooked, and you know what? When I play Overcooked, I still like it on the PS4 and all. But to me, that's a perfect Nintendo game.
Well, even like bringing it with you on your Switch, right? Like if you know your buddies at school want to try it, you just break out like the Joy-Con, give them that one, and there you go, two-player Overcooked, just as, you know, how it was supposed to be played. You know,
my goal is in between classes. This is what's going to happen. Those first few days of school are slow as fuck.
Mm-hmm.
You go in, you get your fucking that fucking shit. What you're going to do for
your syllabus.
Yeah, your syllabus. That's the word I was looking for. Your fucking syllabus. They send you on your merry way, and you got too much time. So you know what I could say to the people stuck? Hey, let's go play some fucking Mario Kart, because I'm also going to buy another Joy-Con. And with that, I only need 2 Joy-Cons, technically, to play 4 players.
Yep. For
Mario Kart. So I could boot that shit up. Quick question, though, Alex. Is there a mobile charger for the Switch?
So you can actually buy these kind of like cell phone batteries that exist. There's got to be a specific amperage that you get, though, because, you know, you need to have like some pretty good amperage so that it actually charges your Switch as opposed to sustaining it. And the reason why I say that is because, like, if you buy the wrong battery, it will just, you know, sustain the battery and make the drain slower on your Switch, not necessarily charge it. So I know that there's a bunch of guides out there that I've tweeted at some point. Maybe I can just, you know, look for them again, search for them again. But yeah.
Because, you know, I'm on the road a lot, especially at school. Mm-hmm. So I need a mobile charger. I mean, there's times when I even take my 3DS with me and my PS, my Vita charger too. So, you know, it's just one of those things.
Yeah. I mean, as with most technology, the brightness of your screen as well as the volume of, you know, of the speakers will, you know, contribute to how long the charge is going to last. I remember when I brought my Mario Kart 8 Deluxe with my Switch, and I went to the latest Twitch PDX meetup, that the battery lasted for about 4 to 5 hours because I had like the brightness turned a little bit, you know, like from like the lowest point, and, you know, the volume was kind of like fairly low, like lower than like a quarter of the volume. I mean, we could still hear it, but, you know, it lasted for quite a while. So Zelda, I know, like, I think Zelda, regardless of, you know, the volume and the battery and the brightness, I think it only really lasts for like 3 hours on battery alone. But, you know, otherwise, you know, 3 hours for a Zelda game, especially like an actual full Zelda game, I mean, that's not bad.
Yeah, that's not bad at all.
Mm-hmm.
I'm excited for getting a Switch. I really am.
Yeah. I mean,
I'm really pumped.
It's crazy because, like, you know, like you said earlier, like, you know, like you were talking about how, you know, you play 99 Vitas on the Vita and, you know, and Binding of Isaac on there, like looking at like all the Nintendo Switch games and stuff, like you certainly have like a wealth of games, especially if you like Neo Geo games too, because they have an abundance of them.
Well, here's the thing about Binding of Isaac 2 on the Vita. It does not have the expansion Afterbirth on the Vita.
Yeah, and the Switch one does.
Yep, that's one game I'm definitely getting.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I would like to say I'd get Bomberman, and that sucks that Bomberman sucks. I mean, that's a perfect game.
Blaster Master is pretty good.
Blaster Master?
Yeah, the remake on the Switch is pretty good.
Oh yeah. And I heard that is pretty good.
And of course, Switch, like another platform for, Shovel Knight. I mean,
I don't know.
You don't know?
I mean, I beat it on several platforms as documented on this show.
Mm-hmm.
But that game is just so good. It's in that same. Not very many games get to that certain level, like Mega Man 2 or Castlevania, or or Sonic the Hedgehog 2, where it's just almost the perfect platformer.
Yeah,
and that game does.
Mm-hmm.
In my opinion,
it's just in general, like the Switch is such a good platform. Like, I mean, graphics aside, right? Like, it really is a great platform that does encourage like 2-player play. Like, really, the only, one of the few Nintendo games that really don't allow this is Splatoon 2. And even then, it's because, like they want to maintain 60 frames per second. And I really, with all the stuff that's happening, I don't think that they can, realistically do that in, split screen, especially with the horsepower of the system,
Oh, yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
Sure. Yeah, well, it's an exciting time to be a Nintendo fan, and just to add, I'm still going to keep my 3DS around because there's a lot of great stuff on that handheld too.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
I mean, there's a lot of great stuff. So,
speaking of the 3DS, have you heard of the news about like the Metroid 2 remake that's coming out later this year for the 3DS?
I know it's coming out, but that's about it.
So this has kind of riled up a few people, and I feel like, like this is something that I want to hear your opinion on, because before the start of the show, we kind of talked about scarcity of the hardware and Amiibos, which, you basically don't care for, right?
Yeah, I mean, let me correct something. The only Amiibo that I really want to get is the Cloud Amiibo, just because it's Cloud.
Right.
Just because it's Cloud. That's it. I don't, because I'm a Final Fantasy fan. That's why.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I really don't care about the rest of the Amiibos. And I do like all those characters that they make Amiibos of, though.
Right. So this latest controversy kind of came out because they just revealed that in order to unlock hard mode in the newest Metroid 2 game that Mercury Steam is working on, by the way, you have to have the Amiibo for it.
Fuck that.
that was a long, length of silence there. I thought like I lost you for a second.
Why?
I don't know. I don't know.
Do it the old-fashioned way. Beat the fucking game on normal or something, then unlock the motherfucker. Every game... I don't even want to talk about this. Move on. God, that's fucking dumb. That's so stupid.
Yeah.
I mean... Look, I can see the Amiibos unlocking costumes for you on Smash Brother. That's fine and dandy. I don't care about that.
Cosmetics. Totally cool.
But not a fucking mode or a difficulty. That's just as bad as fucking DLC making you pay for it. You're going the route of EA. What the fuck?
Yeah.
Fucking stupid. It's no different than DLC. I am fucking sorry. And then you know what's going to happen? Nintendo's only going to produce like 5 per fucking store. And then, of course, the Amiibo people who have hard-ons for it have to wait in line for fucking 1 a.m. to fucking buy them. They're going to go grab them, and then us fuckers don't get a hard mode. But the Amiibo collectors who will never fucking open them will. Fuck that.
Yeah, that's kind of like, like that really upset me too, is that, like, okay, yeah, cosmetics, I agree with you. Totally fine. Like if you, like maybe like a bonus weapon here and there that, don't really like, mean much for the gameplay. Like, like an altered version of it, right? Like,
you know what? It's kind of like the stuff they do in Final Fantasy 14. Remember how like Amazon had that deal and you could get like the staff?
Mm-hmm.
The staff, and you could change your spirit into the staff?
Yeah, like the Goku staff kind of thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, stuff like that, that's fine. because that's cosmetic, and you can, completely still have a usable weapon, but it's a cosmetic thing. You can glamour that shit.
Right.
Go on. I better shut up.
Yeah, to me, like, this is just dumb, right? Like, so you basically spent all this, like, hard work and effort to make a mode that maybe, like, less than 5% of the population is able to access because they have the amiibo. That seems really dumb. Like, even from, like, a project management standpoint, like, let's say I'm the boss of, like, Mercury Steam, right? It's like, hey, guys, we're going to put in, like, 80 more hours to this game per week because we're going to have to make a hard mode for the game that only, like, I don't know, Amiibo owners can do. Like, imagine how pissed the employees would be, like, just to kind of make sure it's balanced out, it's not a bullshit hard mode, Like, man, like, that seems really dull. Now, there might have been information that have been released by the time this comes out, right? Like, because obviously, like, we always record about a week, behind and release it, like a week later and stuff like that. But, if this has been updated, we urge you guys to update us on podcast of mybacklogbattle.tv so we can report it to the rest of you guys if, things have changed in this department. Again, like, that's podcast of mybacklogbattle.tv, and let us know, like, what do you think about this? Because this is fucking ridiculous in our opinion.
I still want to get the game, but fuck.
I know, it puts a damper on things.
I want to get the game because it's gonna be, let's talk about Metroid 2 for a second, because that's like the forgotten game of that series,
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Even the GBA games get mentioned more than that.
Yeah.
Metroid 2 was the first Metroid that I really played.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember as a kid, I got a little frustrated with it, but because I didn't really quite understand Metroid at that time. Because I'll be honest, I never played the original on the NES, even though I was a big NES kid. But Metroid 2 holds a special place in my heart because it's the first one, and I remember it being so polarizing because if you remember, games would get these Game Boy ports, right? Metroid wasn't the only one, but Mario's another one, or even the Zelda, where they would still have the spirit, but the aesthetics were so different.
Right.
Like Zelda, Link's Awakening, you're in a dream. You're in some fish's dream. Mario is Super Mario Land. I don't know what the fuck's going on in that game.
Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, you shooting aliens and going through pyramids and shit.
Apparently, it's weird because it's apparently canon because there are enemies from Super Mario Land that actually show up in Super Mario Odyssey.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah, like, it's funny because, like, this will be a conversation for later, I feel. But, like, I was watching some videos on Super Mario Odyssey, and they were saying, like, yeah, like, one of the guys playing was like, yeah, Super Mario Land's one of my favorite games, like, Mario games, and there are, like, several enemies that actually show up from that game that's in this game, and I'm like, wow, that's kind of crazy. But
the bigger question is, Mario has a cannon?
Well, we'll talk about that later when we get to that
Mario
subject.
Has a canon? There's a continuity to these fucking games?
Dude, it blows my mind, but we'll talk about that later because really, like, I one of the things I forgot to talk to you about that I was going to use to lead into some of the conversations we have today is actually, like, I watched a bunch of E3 videos about, some of the games that I'm really excited about, and we'll talk about Mario Odyssey later, so, but, yeah. So, Metroid 2, like you said. Well, here's the thing, too, about Metroid 2, and I've only seen it in screenshots. I've never actually played it emulated. I've never actually played it in any sort of other form ever, right? But one of the things that I noticed was that Samus is so fucking huge on the screen that you barely see a part of the levels because of the way that they rendered Samus.
I have the game. I have it on my 3DS.
Okay.
I have the virtual console version, and you are absolutely right. She's fucking huge. But for some reason, it didn't really bother me.
Okay.
The thing that's weird about this game is basically you're committing genocide.
Okay.
No, I'm not kidding you. You're killing that's the goal. There's 40-some Metroids, and, like, unlike other Metroids where it's about unlocking the area, you go around and you kill every Metroid in the game. That's why when you play Super Metroid, you have the last Metroid. Remember that?
That's true. Okay, yeah.
That's where that comes from, because you committed basically genocide. And then,
Jesus.
And then, of course, as we know, the last Metroid comes and saves you and dies, and its whole species are dead because it saved the exterminator of their I don't know. It commit genocide in Metroid 2. That's all I gotta say.
I don't think they were talking about like long-term ramifications of their character development at the time. I mean, see, video games at the time were so simplistic where we're like, nobody's gonna remember the other game, right? Like, how many people actually bought it? Like, whoops. Like they never realized it several years later when Nintendo kept on re-releasing the fucking games. Whoops.
But I'll say this about Super Metroid, though, going back to that. No matter how much I joke, that ending sequence is fucking awesome.
Yeah, it was really good. I mean, that game in general was really good.
But the ending is just so fucking awesome. Like, you're about to get wiped out and the Metroid comes and saves you. That's like a really emotional moment in that game.
And it was done using gameplay and not like, cutscenes and stuff, Like, it was well done.
Yeah, that sequence was cool. So.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So, okay, so let's kind of like, continue on here because, obviously we're still kind of salty about like Metroid 2, like the new one. Yeah. I want to kind of talk about LawBreakers because about a week or so ago, as of this recording, we actually had like an open beta on the PS4 and the PC. And in case people don't know what this is a competitive shooter. Yes, there's been a lot of them, 5-on-5. And it is actually being designed and directed by Cliff Bleszinski.
He designed another shooter. Surprise, surprise.
Well, he designed another competitive shooter because the last time he did this, it was back in '99, and it was called Unreal Tournament.
Yeah.
So he hasn't touched, he hasn't touched that specific genre in a while. And mind you, he actually came out of retirement because he was after Gears. He actually retired from video games. I don't know if you know this.
No, I did not.
Yeah, he retired from video games, and then he just kind of saw the landscape and said, I'm going to unretire myself and make a game that I really want to see out there. And in a way, LawBreakers is kind of like a successor to, Unreal Tournament, even though there is an Unreal Tournament that's being built right now. And it's supposed to be a lot faster, a lot more frenetic than Unreal Tournament. Although he did say, like, on consoles, we had to slow it down a little bit because, like mouse and keyboard versus controller controls, like you want to be able to react a very specific way to a lot of the things that's happening. I'll tell you this, like, it is the reason why I mentioned Unreal Tournament, because Unreal Tournament had very untraditional game modes, right? Like, it had game modes where it wasn't just simple capture the flag. Right. It was like, take this thing to your base and protect it for like 60 seconds or something like that. And LawBreakers kind of continues that idea. The only exception is that it is a hero shooter. In a way, hero/villain shooter. So so at the beginning of the game, you'll either be sided with the Law or the Breakers. So the Law are the good guys, the Breakers are bad guys, right? And each class is represented in each side. So, for example, if you're on the Law side, if you're like a battle medic, a combat medic, you'll play the role of Taki, who's this Asian girl. But if you're in the Breaker side, you'll play this other Asian man who, has the same role. But, like, in any case, like, the main hook of this game is that other than the hero gameplay, it's all about mobility. And there are pockets of the levels that actually break gravity. And so what happens is you can actually boost around in these areas, double jump, even float all the way to the top, which, like, at first when I heard the idea, it was kind of weird because it's like swimming in first person. Like, when is that ever fun? Like, think about that. Like,
what the fuck?
Well, because you're in anti-gravity, you can kind of boost yourself up and kind of, go all over the place. And it's kind of a weird concept. And sometimes the anti-gravity turns off, so everybody plays on the ground. And there's really high mobility. We're talking like jetpacks and flying in the air and shit like that. So it's almost like a mix of Tribes mixed with Unreal Tournament. Now,
oh shit, that's a game I haven't heard about in years.
It's weird, right? But there's also, it's really high mobility. Now, it's really good for a few things. One, a lot of people, including myself, feel that it does that kind of fast-paced, frenetic, and gritty gameplay better than the newly announced Unreal Quake Champions, which kind of tries to do the same thing, but with Quake characters and Quake rules instead, right?
Gotcha.
So it's, so it has a very, like strict demographic of like, all right, hardcore players and stuff, and that's all fine and dandy, but and it has a loot system, so it's almost like Overwatch. I think the best part of this game when it comes out, it's actually not going to be sold at like a full price at $60. It's actually going to just be like $30. It's actually going to be sold cheaper than when Overwatch came out, which was at $40 on PC. Now, my concerns with the game, and this is again because based on open beta, we don't know how old that build is, but some of the animations on the PS4 version are janky as fuck. Like, they do this, I think, so that, people can focus more on, the shooting aspect of it and the gameplay, but the animations weren't smooth at all. Like, for example, like, there's like a countdown at the beginning of a match where you kind of like just can't move, but you can stare at people. When people are like pivoting around and stuff, it's really kind of, kind of jerky, like in terms of like they're turning, and I'm like, that's really weird. Also, like, it seems to me that a lot of the, kinds of shooting involve you trying to shoot somebody who's, like, really, really super tiny. Now, I don't know how I feel about this because, again, like, I haven't really played a lot of matches in LawBreakers, but I can tell you that they are very exciting, in a way. And I think that it does have longevity, like, beyond Quake Champions and beyond the Unreal Tournament that's coming out. I think if they support this properly, this could have a life of its own.
And that's the question I have for you.
Okay.
The support. Is this going to be pay or free?
That I do not know. I don't know anything about whether or not characters are going to be free or maps are going to be free. I would imagine it would be free because why? Because its closest competition is Overwatch. They're not charging for anything. So I feel like if you try to charge for things, you're going to wind up with a situation with Battleborn where they started charging everybody for like characters and maps, and look at where they are now. They're nowhere to be found.
Let's be honest. Overwatch changed everything.
Yes.
It changed the perception of how DLC is done. It showed that DLC can be done. Because, I've always had this idea of why don't they just patch in the characters as opposed to charging them? And I get, they want to make money. But Overwatch has adopted that model that when you get a patch, you don't just get bug fixes. Well, you do sometimes, but for the most part, you don't. You get new characters, new stages. And that game just grows and grows and grows and grows and grows. Mm-hmm. And that's the thing. Overwatch has shown that you can have a free model without it being a shitty game, because Overwatch is not a shitty game by any means. I mean, I'm not a multiplayer guy, and I like that game. That says a lot. Same with Alex. Right. Mm-hmm. Number two, it shows that when you get into these competition type games, it's very tricky to do DLC. A fighting game can kind of get away with it because sometimes the characters aren't balanced, that type of thing. But with these type of games, you got to be careful, because I remember there used to be a lot of free-to-play games. There was one that I used to play called Sidearms, but I remember I'd get killed because people would buy premium guns.
Right, and that's just the wrong way to go about it.
Yeah, exactly. But Overwatch did it correctly, and that's, you got to really question when you do these competition games, do you have... One, the developer has to look, do they have the money to support this game? Mm-hmm. And number two, do they have a sort of alternate premium model like Overwatch does to help support it throughout the years without charging for the main content, and still, in a way, all the content is free, i.e. the loot box system.
Right.
That's what they have to consider. And I don't know if this new game will do that.
Right. Well,
because Overwatch changed the landscape. There's no doubt about that.
Absolutely. And
that's
okay. So here's what I'm reading right now. It says LawBreakers doesn't level the battlefield; it rises above it with a no-nonsense one-time price for either PC or PlayStation 4 that includes all future roles. So all heroes, maps, and modes for free. Yep.
Okay.
No season pass BS required to compete in the future of FPS combat. Just absolute skill. So yeah, so it's completely all, free. So which is great, because at $30, that's a good entry level for, a multiplayer shooter. And actually, like, the funny thing is, like, Cliff Bleszinski actually took offense when Overwatch and a few other, like, multiplayer, shooters tried to charge $60 for it. And I feel like Titanfall was also kind of lumped as part of that. But that being said, though, it's not necessarily that it's a knock on their decision. It's more like, there's not you're trying to get too much out of people when people are going to spend money on it anyway. That being said, it also seems like, Lawbreakers is going to have that, pay per loot box kind of system. So that's another way to support the game. And let's be honest, the reason why Overwatch is so popular too is that, they have those loot boxes that you can buy with real money. And like you said earlier, it's all cosmetic, like it's either stickers or, skins and all that good stuff. It's not really anything that'll make you OP in the game per se.
And that's always been the problem with a lot of premium games in a way, right? That used to follow that model about a decade ago. Like I said, Sidearms, I think it was called Sidearms. It was and I think it's still around. It was this FPS, and again, I remember having fun playing with my friends, but if I go in the matchmaking, some guy would have a ridiculously overpowered gun, and he'd just wipe every, because he somehow paid $25, and yes, guns were $25 in this game. $25 for a fucking gun.
That's crazy.
Whereas for $5 more, you could buy this new Cliff Bleszinski game.
Yeah. Where everything is free.
Yeah.
Pretty much.
And, you don't need $25 guns.
Yeah. So overall, like, I'm excited about Lawbreakers, once it comes out, I'll check it out and see, like, what's going to go on with that game. For the time being, I am kind of, like, saying that, like, the animations are kind of a little bit janky here and there. I'm not really a fan of it, but it's fast and frenetic. You're not really even going to notice it, unless you're just standing around, in which case, why are you standing around in a competitive multiplayer shooter game? But it's certainly aiming for a different crowd than Overwatch. Like, it's not aiming for that same community, if you will. And I feel like it sits at a very good place in between Overwatch and anything that's more hardcore than Lawbreakers, and not trying to say that Lawbreakers is not hardcore, because I feel like with the right amount of skill, you can really make that game into something amazing. But, like, it is what it is.
Yep.
Yeah.
I don't know. I think I've only got room for one competitive shooter, and that's Overwatch. I don't think.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't think I'll get into this. And Cliffy B's, I don't know.
He's a good guy. Like, I feel like he knows what he wants to build, and that's what he likes doing. Like, he builds games that he wants to play, and you got to have an admiration for a guy who can pull that off, right? Because a lot of us dream about, like, making our own video game, like, but how many of us can actually do it?
That's fine, but the type of game he wants to build is not exactly one I usually want to play.
Sure.
Just saying.
Sure. Yeah.
So that's fine and dandy.
Yeah. So, kind of, I'm going to kind of, like, rotate around for a bit and kind of, like, venture away from Overwatch, because I do want to kind of talk about that. But I want to kind of go back into something I was teasing earlier about Super Mario Odyssey, because I've actually watched a bunch of videos about it. And it's kind of crazy because, like, like, when it first released, remember, we were kind of apprehensive about it because it felt more like Mario 64. Like, in the way that they were designing the levels. It wasn't like, like the 3D World series or the 3D Land series, where it's more focused on platforming. And and admittedly, like, kind of, seeing a little bit more of the game kind of gotten me around to the fact that, it's almost like, I think the better way to describe what this game is, it's more of an elaboration of what they tried to do in Sunshine, which I actually enjoyed.
Yeah, I like Sunshine. You and I have always proclaimed our admiration for Mario Sunshine.
Mm-hmm. And they actually mentioned that, and that's the surprising thing.
Really? Yeah. The thing let's talk about Sunshine. I think Sunshine's kind of given a bad rap because of the water pack, but I think the water pack added something to it.
Yeah, it added
that was unique.
Yeah, it's very interesting. But moreover, it actually created a level of exploration that was different than most Mario games. And I feel like the only reason why people kind of poo-pooed it, I feel, is because he was using an outside peripheral, not like himself, as a way to propel himself through challenges, which I kind of understand where that's coming from, but at the same time, like you said, I feel like it's kind of given a bad rap because of that simple fact, right?
Also remember, I don't know if you remember this, but, and I'm gonna give you a counterpoint to those people who complain about that, is there were stages where you didn't have the water pack. Remember those pure jumping levels where it was just based on pure platforming? You did not have the water pack,
right?
So yeah, that's no excuse to I get why you're trying to empathize with them, but I don't, because there was that element too, and there were quite a bit of those levels.
Yeah.
So
yeah,
just wanted to add that.
Yeah. But just looking more about Mario Odyssey and kind of I don't know how much you've seen of it. Other than the trailer, have you seen anything more about it?
No, I haven't.
Oh my God. So we talk about user interface and UI design here on the show because I'm a stickler for creativity when it comes to that, right? One of the best UIs that we've ever seen this year was Persona 5, best UI, right? But the idea behind Super Mario Odyssey is reflected so much that it's kind of weird how they actually use their UI systems in different ways. For example, the map menu in Super Mario Odyssey is actually a travel map. It's as though you are traveling to different parts of not even the Mushroom Kingdom, but of the world. And, you basically have this map in the middle with, anything that you've discovered, right? But the most interesting part about this travel map is you can actually scroll to the very left side and to the very right side, and they actually have text talking about different landmarks that you may have not discovered, So in a way, it's almost like they baked in some of the hints for that level into the actual UI itself. And mind you, the travel guide changes every single time you go to a new level. So it's weird. It's weird because it's almost like a platformer mixed with adventure. It's not action platform anymore. It's more adventure platformer. And I feel like, this kind of move away from action platformers okay by my book, because I do love adventure games because of the exploration aspect, and the whole idea of being able to capture opponents with your cap and being able to go a bunch of different places is really fucking cool. It adds a bit of mystery back into Mario,
I've only seen the trailer, but it's a game that when that I will definitely pick up because it's a different take on the whole Mario thing, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's going to be cool because it looks like it's more in tune with the Galaxy games as opposed to Mario 64.
Yeah, well,
which is a good thing because I do like the Galaxy games.
I do. In a way, the Galaxy, I think it's really more representative towards of the Sunshine era. Really, because we're not talking, because in Galaxy, if you want to talk about Galaxy, it's really almost like a traditional Mario level design.
That's true.
It's not sprawling, but the thing that I really saw that made me hesitate at first was that all of these worlds are sprawling. They are huge. New Donk City is actually a huge area to explore, especially with the verticality of that level. But, it used to be, I thought about it more and I'm like, but if this is an adventure platformer, which, really Sunshine really is, for the exception of those platforming parts, I'm okay with that. I think, and mind you, the levels are supposedly bigger than Sunshine's. They're supposed to be bigger than that.
Okay.
Which if you think about it, wow, that's fucking huge. There's a Nintendo Treehouse video from E3 that they showed just the town in the desert area, and it's just a small patch in the middle of this fucking area, which is supposed to be bigger than what it is. And then they scrolled to the edge of the travel map, and they showed pyramids and sphinxes, and I'm like, wait, they have teases of like what else you can find in that area, that's kind of fucking cool. It's like, you know, it's kind of like hinting at like what else you can find in this if you actually fully explore the world, you know. So, and that's why I call this an adventure platformer, not exactly an action platform anymore, because, you know, it doesn't emphasize too much on action, especially, I mean, I'm pretty sure it'll still be there, right? But, you know, it's the discovery of the world that becomes important, which brings me to my next topic about this. All the costumes in this game are actually inspired by previous Mario costumes that I've seen. Yes, it includes Hotel Mario.
What the fuck?
Yeah. So
why?
Because it's a way for them to actually honor, you know, Mario's legacy. I mean, it's kind of crazy to think about it.
Mark on Mario's legacy.
Despite that, it's still an acknowledgement of it. Because if you think about it this way, you know, one of the things that I heard about New Donk City, which I don't know if you know this, but Pauline is the mayor of New Donk City.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's cool.
But it's basically the world after the Donkey Kong games. Like, not Donkey Kong Country, I'm talking about the Donkey Kong games where Mario's in it. You know, and that's why it's called New Donk City, and that's the product of what happened after those events, and that's kind of interesting because I never really looked at, you know, like Super Mario Odyssey as a whirlwind tour of everything that you've experienced in Mario throughout the past, you know, 20, 30 years, but it's starting to sound like it is, especially when one of the guys said, like, yeah, there are hints to, you know, Super Mario Land characters here, you know, that's kind of inserted, which is a really good detail. And I'm like, wait, so apart from Bowser wanting to marry, you know, Princess Toadstool, what is Mario Odyssey really? And, you know, and I kind of pieced together everything, and it is truly a whirlwind tour, like a travel tour of everything that Mario's experienced throughout his entire career. And that really put into clarity, like, what's really going on, like, why they made these levels and why they, you know, they feel really strongly towards a specific Mario or you know, it's a callback to something really old, you know, kind of like New Donk City. And and to me, that really increased my fascination towards it, because it's like, it's a celebration of Mario. From the worst to the best, you know.
I like that. I do. I still don't understand why they're talking about Hotel Mario, but regardless, I do like that. I do like that overall. You know.
Yeah.
You know. I mean, I wonder if they're gonna. I wonder if they're gonna honor the Super Mario Super Show, though, by chance, if they're honoring dark pieces of Mario's past, you know what I mean?
I mean, maybe, because, like, you know, like, remember a few weeks ago when we talked about, like, somebody was complaining that Mario was wearing a poncho? You do know that actually came from a real Nintendo game, right?
Yes, but I don't know which one, though.
That's totally fine, but if you look for it, you will find it. Every single costume that he's in actually has a callback to another Mario game. Like, for example, like, you know, I want to say, like, one of the costumes he gets in the game is actually a Wrecking Crew costume.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I mean, he won't look like the 8-bit Wrecking Crew guy, you know, but he'll look similar to that character, you know what I'm saying? So, again, like, I feel like it's great, and I feel like they couldn't really name the Super Mario World because, you know, it's not really that's already used, but Odyssey is kind of an interesting way to frame everything. It's almost like a world tour. It's a celebration. Yeah, it's great. It feels good.
But we'll see the classics, though, I'm sure, like the Tanuki suit and stuff like that.
They said that there won't be any sort of power-ups in the game. Just the suit changes.
That's a suit.
I don't know the costume specifically. I'm not entirely sure if that's in the game, but then again, it could be. You know, it has to be, right? Like, it is one of the more, you know, like, that's one of my favorite costumes in Mario history. So
I love the Tanuki suit. When I beat Super Mario Brothers 3 about 3 years ago, which I chronicled on this very podcast 3 years ago, that was the suit that I did my end game in the last world, that Dark World. Nice. You know.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I love that.
You know, I didn't like the Tanuki suit as much as a kid, but the statue thing didn't make sense to me at the time, I guess because I was a little kid, but the statue thing is badass.
Mm-hmm.
And it's a weird suit because it's real cryptic. It's like you got you're a huge raccoon. You have the same abilities as the leaf, right? Mm-hmm. But you change into a statue of an old shepherd.
Yeah, it's really weird if you think about it, and it, kind of using that as a model. I almost feel like somebody looked at that with the development team and said, "What if we applied that to all the enemies?" Because even the shepherd, like statue and stuff, it is Mario, right?
Yeah.
Like, and the thing is, like, when you capture a bullet bill or a Goomba, for example, it gets Mario's eyes, of course, the cap, and also his mustache. So it's like, it's almost like as if they said, like, well, what if we just apply that to everything in the world that can do that, and make that into an interesting platforming / adventure element, And, I mean, as you can tell, I'm really high on the game, and that's certainly a game that's a must-buy on my Switch, so I'm definitely looking forward to picking that up, trust me.
Oh, yeah, it's going to be a good one.
Yeah.
More proof that this year kicks ass.
Yeah, continues to, yeah.
Continues to.
Yeah. I know you want to talk about Xenoblade Chronicles, so let's just get that out of the way, because I feel like you played it a lot. It's cost you some valuable Final Fantasy XIV time over the weekend, but
that's okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay, so if you were listening to the show, I played about 13 hours of it 2 years ago. Mm-hmm. I don't know why I stopped playing it. I really don't, because I really like the game, but I am now 25 hours into the game, and I've done a lot of exploration, and I can say exploring is part of the fun of the game. Mm-hmm. I am going to say this, though, and this, when Alex and I usually give scores, and if I'm wrong, you could correct me, speaking on your behalf, okay?
Sure.
This is going to be an interesting review because while the score is nothing new, it's a score we've given plenty of times, the result of the score, I think, is going to be a little different than normal. And let me give this preface. Usually when I give a 4 out of 5 or a 3 out of 5 or usually it's because of a couple of major problems, right?
Okay.
Not problems, but hindrances. Would that be correct? Because of one or two big hindrances?
I would say more of a distraction, right? Like if it's something that's a glaring thing that, doesn't feel right, like obviously like you would put a dent in there here and there,
Okay, so the score I'm going to give Xenoblade, it's going to be interesting because it's not one or two big glaring things. It's a bunch of minor glaring things. Mm. And it's just that it's not too many because the game's really good, but it's a bunch of little things that kind of dampen the experience.
I see.
If it was one or two of these, it would be a 5 out of 5, but I'll explain why I'll give the score I'm giving to it. So let's talk about one of your concerns, the story, real quick, okay?
Okay.
I think the story is really fucking good. And the character development is really indebted into the main story. Like, I feel there's a lot of character motivation from the main cast. I feel that, like, when I first played the game, I remember you saying that you got a little further than me and it seemed a little bit more plot-driven, but I don't feel that. I feel it's very character-driven. And it is. It's really, the quest is... you're really driven to get revenge on a personal tragedy that happened to you against the Mechons. Mm-hmm. So the gist of the game is there's two gods and they fought or some shit and everyone lives on their bodies. And one was a biological god where humans and other, biological creature lives. And there's a robot god and the robot gods are trying to invade. Mm-hmm. And again, this is a Tetsuya Takahashi game, so existentialism and all that good stuff and the existence of God and all that comes into play. That's, if you've played any of his games, Xenogears being my favorite game of all time, that's something that happens in all his games as far as I, can tell you. And the story is really good. It's really, really good. Again, all the characters, I think, get a good amount of screen time and development so far, and I'm really satisfied with it. I really am with the story. Story's really good. The Hearts to Hearts, which was one of your concerns, those are additional segments growing up some of the character relationships in the game. The affinities, which, affinity is more of a battle thing, but they're nice little segments that add but aren't necessary. They're kind of like the skits in the Tale series. Because, again, the main character development, in my opinion, is in the main story.
Okay, so can you liken the skits then kind of like to those moments in... I mean, I'm going to use a different game here, obviously. Bravely Default when they just have like a random conversation here and there that really don't have any meaning.
Yeah, they're fun and they add a little bit, but yeah, it's the same thing.
Okay. All right.
Yeah, exactly. That's what the heart-to-hearts are. But you have to unlock them, and you grow your affinity several ways by, like, if you have the same party members in battle, their affinity will grow that way. You know, you help them, that type of stuff. And then giving them presents.
Okay.
So there's that. Giving them presents.
Yeah. So
that's really good. The story is really, really fucking good. So if you're looking for an RPG with good narrative, this is one to definitely get.
Mm-hmm.
Number 2, the world is still really cool to explore. I really like exploring it. It's huge, especially on something like the 3DS. I don't know even how they managed to fit this fucking game onto a 3DS, even if it's a new 3DS. I don't know. It's astonishing how they fit such a big game on there. I mean, this is a huge game. Huge game. Mm-hmm. And there's a lot of, what's cool about it is if you just explore, you'll discover something new. You'll discover a monster maybe in a low level area that's more up to your speed. I'm around level 32 right now. No, 35. So like one area has a lot of low level monsters, but I'm discovering some level 32s, 33s, 34s, that type of stuff. Special monsters, that type of thing. It's really cool. You sometimes discover new areas. There's ether things that you find. Really cool stuff. Mechanically, the game is really good. In terms of armor and equipment, armor and equipment is done really well. What's cool about it is it does change the appearance of your character, but I thought at one point, I noticed a lot of games that do change the appearance of your character. Sometimes the armor looks more and more samey, but it really doesn't. Like, for example, there's a piece of armor that I got for Charlotte called Jungle Top and Jungle Bottoms, right?
Mm-hmm.
And Charla, who, I'll give you an example of what she looks like. She has like this tank top and shorts and that type of thing, typical anime, character. She's like the sexy character of the game, right? I suppose. And, I noticed that some of the armor actually covers her up a lot, which I thought was kind of cool because it differentiates it, right?
Right. But
then the Jungle Top and Jungle Bottoms gives her even less clothing than her normal attire. So what I like about it, I'm not saying that aspect of it. I'm saying that the armor does make the characters look radically different, and it does look different from, where a lot of games the armor will look the same. Do you get what I mean?
Yeah.
It's real. That's really cool. And then speaking of armor, there's a really interesting system called the gem system on a mechanic level, right?
Mm-hmm.
So let's talk about that for a second. As you play through the game, you battle monsters and you get gems from them. And then you can find these mineral deposits of gems. So you mine them. And then you go to this gem furnace in the first town because you can skip travel, which is really nice. And you go back there and you make these gems. And you combine the different gems and you can turn them into like strength plus, muscle up, which increases your defense, different attributes, and you put them in slots in the armor. And it's really fun because making different, gems helps you.
Right.
And it can really increase and make a difference in your armor. Like you can increase your strength. So making gems is a lot. And it just adds to how deep this fucking game is, because not only that, but you also have a lot of skills, and skills are interesting. And I want to tie this to the skills real quick, Alex, okay?
Sure.
So skills have like 12 slots, but you can't access them right away. You have to buy books to get the next 4. So to get the next 4 slots open, you have to buy an intermediate book, which isn't bad. And you'll get AP from fighting battles and all that. And there's, of course, more enemies you fight, the more AP you get. And you distribute them to the skills, and each character gets a ton of skills. And you can really customize your skill tree because you have 8 slots, right? For skills, for battle skills. And you could really, customize the ones you like and don't like. And you can, and that goes back to AP, and you can buy the books for the ones that you use more and that type of stuff. So skill customization and skill building is really awesome in this game. Really good. Mm-hmm. And the battle system is fan-fucking-tastic. It's aged well. It's, it's a lot like an MMO. You got to move around a lot, that type of stuff.
Right.
Really good stuff. Now, the shortcomings in this game. First and foremost, the camera. The camera can be a pain in the ass at times. Even with the stick, there's times when the camera won't move past the wall or something, and you can't really see where you're at. And that's vital to a game like this because, let me give you an example, Alex. Think about this. Imagine you playing Final Fantasy XIV where you have to move around a lot, right?
Sure.
And the camera gets stuck somewhere. How would you feel about that?
Well, I mean, especially if I'm traversing a dungeon, which, even let's even put this to a better example, Final Fantasy 15. If you're trying to basically not, piss off the entire cave, you might want to be able to see where the hell you're going, right?
Right.
And having a good camera is really important. And the funny thing you mentioned about camera, I actually watched like a GDC video today of the guy who designed the camera in Journey and listing out the 50 biggest mistakes people do when they design camera. And, and I couldn't help but think about Final Fantasy 15 as an example of that. And even to a degree, when I did play a little bit of Xenoblade Chronicles on the Wii, I encountered that too. And that's kind of problematic.
Yeah, it's a bit of a problem in this game. Now, it's not as bad as Final Fantasy 15's camera. Because when you're in wide open spaces, I've never had issues, but it's when you really get into close, tight places, it can be problematic.
Yeah.
So that's the tricky thing, is it? And that's why I consider the camera a minor problem, but that's where I was talking about. There's a lot of minor things that kind of hurt this game. Okay?
Yeah.
So that's the first one. The other one is quests.
Is it just like a fucking, throw up of too many quests out there, or?
Yeah, there's a lot of the quests are based on. There's some quests that are interesting, I'll admit, surprisingly, but it uses that arbitrary idea of quests as filler. You know what I mean? Now, mind you, let's not armchair quarterback too much, because remember, let's look at when this game came out, and I'm not talking about the US release 5 years ago. I'm talking about the original release 10 years ago. It was a different time, okay? And we live in a post Witcher 3 world, okay? So let's keep that in mind. But it still bothers me a little bit because the quests are like, fetch this, fetch that, fetch this, fetch that, or go look for items that, spawn. Because here's the interesting thing. There are items that are around the world, and they're blue orbs, and you just pick them up. You just run in and pick them up. And sometimes it's just pick up 4 sweet radishes, and they just spawn, and you got to wait for them to spawn. And that's a little bit, that kind of irks me because that's a little based on luck. And I know there's people who like to farm and stuff, but I've never been a big fan of, if you're going to make me collect something, why do you make it dependent on some random spawn rate? I've never been a fan of that.
Yeah, that seems to me like, most of the design of these quests are kind of dictated by some old MMO kind of ideologies, right? Like EverQuest type of, old, if you will, where it's like, oh yeah, it's really cool that, you get to collect this at 4 a.m. Pacific time. It's like, wait, what? Why do you want me to wait this long? And sometimes, somebody might, thankfully nobody can steal your drops in this game, but yeah, that's still a really dumb thing of well, it's only available in this time of the day at this rate, or maybe RNG. It's kind of dumb. This isn't an MMO, guys. This is an offline RPG. There are some things that work on MMOs, and there are some things that have to work for JRPGs. Make it fucking simple.
And that's another problem. Some items spawn at night. Some enemies spawn at night. Now, fortunately, this is why I consider this a bunch of minor problems, is this probably has the best time system that I've seen in a game, where if you want it in the afternoon, you could just turn the clock to the afternoon. You don't have to watch a clock move. It just turns in the afternoon.
So it's almost like The Witcher's meditation system and stuff.
Yeah, but better, because you don't have to watch the fucking thing. It just turns into it automatically. So that's fortunate, but it's still a problem. And like, there's one quest where, there's a big monster, you got to slay it, but it only comes when it's rain. Now that's a different problem because you can't set it to rain. You can set the time, but if you want it to rain, you got to repeatedly set it to the time over and over.
Again, a very MMO kind of idea. It's like, like the heavens have to basically like align in order for you to do this thing. And that sounds really frustrating.
Yeah. So, and mind you, this is for minor side stuff, not the main story. The main story stuff's great. And it's very easy to grind. Like, the game's really good about scaling stuff. So you can grind by killing enemies, which I do a lot, which is fine. That's cool. So but again, I agree with you because it's very random, and I think that's a very archaic design. Now, to be fair, remember, this is a game from 7 years ago. I know someone will go out and say it's 5 years ago. No, it's 7 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
So to be fair, it came from a different age, but this is pretty much a straight port of it. And I hope for the sequel, because that's one of the main reasons why I do want a Switch, that they do fix a lot of this.
Mm-hmm.
And I think, like the portable version of this game is perfect. Now, I know some of the stuff might sound like headache-inducing and stuff, but, sometimes the exploring is really good. And one thing I will compliment the game, Tetsuya Takahashi, going back to Xenogears, has had this weird design motive of adding platforming elements to his RPGs. Because there are platforming elements in Xenogears. There's platforming elements in this, and they work really well. They're not bad. They're really pretty good. I mean, this isn't going to win like best platformer of all time, but the platforming elements don't feel arbitrary. He's gotten a good handle of how to do platforming in an RPG. And it's not heavy. Then a lot of it's not heavy platforming, Alex, but it's platforming enough to make it fun. That makes sense.
That just makes it sound weird, because it's like, if you're trying to put platforming in a game genre that doesn't normally, have platforming, I feel like you're kind of almost inviting criticism there, because, like, it's almost like if you force, if you force a genre into something that traditionally isn't that, right? Like, right. And because, I mean, if you think about it, platforming uses a different skill set on you compared to like doing RPGs, right? Like turn-based strategy, or turn-based RPGing. So it's like, to me, like, while I normally admire that sort of thing, it also makes me question like how many people actually find that it adds something significant to the game.
I think it does. I disagree with you. I don't know if you're even disagreeing with me. You're asking questions more so than anything else. So, but I do feel, and here's my thing about it. I think the platforming is what makes the exploration fun, though.
Mm.
And it's not super heavy, but it's there, and it feels natural to the way the world's designed. It doesn't feel forced on. Does that make sense?
I understand that, but like, I guess where I'm getting at is that, like, how many of these are precision jumps? Not a whole
lot. In fact, there's a segment where this is an interesting segment. To get to a boss in the game early on in the main story, you're like in this mine or factory or something.
Mm-hmm.
And you got to go down to the lower level, and it looks like you can't proceed, but there's a spinning platform you have to jump on. And you do have to have a little bit of precision, but not a whole lot. But to me, it added a little bit more fun to that dungeon, the platforming elements, to break the monotony of what that dungeon could have been. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think the platforming breaks the monotony of the exploration and the running. It kind of, it's not to the full extent of what they did in Breath of the Wild, where, like I've said this, one thing that Breath of the Wild did right was, make the environments feel natural by, making you warm up and stuff like that, right?
Sure.
But I feel that the platforming adds a realism to the environment as opposed to just running around it. You know what I mean? That even, like, as much as I like Final Fantasy 15, I don't think Final Fantasy 15 did as well as this game did in a way, in that term. But I do like Final Fantasy 15, don't get me wrong. But the platforming makes it feel a little bit more like you're really traversing this terrain.
Right.
And that's what I like about it. That's one of the game's strong points. But again, there's a lot of little things, like a lot of the quest things bother me. A lot of the camera things bother me. But it's still worth exploring, and that's why I'm giving this game a 4 out of 5.
Okay.
I would give it but again, let's keep in mind a couple things, and I'll say this for the millionth time. The quests come from a different age, but still, it still bugs me.
And you did bring up a lot of really small things that, the thing is, like, there's so many small things that just have added up to, to things that just needs to be addressed, hopefully, in Xenoblade Chronicles too,
Yeah, and I don't know if these things have been addressed in X.
Well, to that end, I feel like, I told you I was going to talk about X a little bit, and I feel like,
okay,
I don't know how I feel like X is like a throwaway title. And the reason why is because, like, in a way, by not naming the next one X2 or whatever, it feels like X belongs in its own outside category with absolutely no continuity to 1. And that's the thing that's kind of crazy is, like, at first I was actually kind of excited that you were going to be able to get it. And then, like, I started hearing, like, wait, you're building your own character. Like, wait, what? Like, that's weird. And then now we heard 2, and it's like, well, that's really going to continue the first one. So I'm like, well, so why did X have to happen? Like, were you guys, like, buying time until you guys make the second one? Because, because X is another one of those games where a lot of people were really super high on it because they loved 1 and then completely died shortly after it came out.
Exactly. And 1 is damn good. Again, forget my... I'm not... You know what? Say I'm a nitpicking, but there's just a lot of little problems that build up.
Yeah.
But it's still a solid game.
And I feel like it's a more solid game than what X was trying to do.
It was, because X really didn't keep my interest.
Yeah.
It felt like X was just like a spin-off title or something, or an experiment.
Yeah.
And I heard the story, there's really not much story to it.
Oh, man.
To X.
Yeah.
And let's be honest, Takahashi can tell a story.
Mm-hmm.
He can tell. I mean, there's a reason why I love Xenogears to this day much, despite its flaws. He can tell a fucking story. And there's a reason why, I'll admit, I'm not the biggest fan of Xenosaga, nor are you, correct?
Yep.
But a lot of people love that story too. And from what I read, it's really good. It's just, that game is just so, those 3 games are so disjointed.
Disjointed, more like, I think the best word to describe it is just, it's too jam-packed with nonsense, because they tried to tell a 7-part story in 3 games.
Yeah, but a lot of people like that story, though, so he can tell a story. But I looked at the trailer for Xenoblade Chronicles 2, and it looks like it's, the main character has a name. You have Shulk in this first one, and it looks like this is more in spirit with this one, and that's probably why they did X to separate itself from the other 2 games. Now, I don't think this one is in terms connected continuity wise with this first game. I could be wrong, but I don't think it is. But it maintains that it's going to have a good story, and it's going to be in the same spirit as the first game.
That's good.
So I'm really excited for Xenoblade Chronicles 2, and I hope they fix some of the side quest stuff.
I hope so, too.
And one other thing, too. There's an interesting side quest, but again, it has some of the same problems, not to the extreme that Dragon Quest Inquisition did, but it does have that same problem on a more superficial level, where you have to rebuild a colony. And it was fun, it's weird because you have to collect pieces, right, from... enemy drops. But again, it falls into that trap that you hope that enemy drops it.
Mm-hmm.
You kill those enemies and you hope it drops it, or you hope it spawns on the ground. And then you have to invest money to it, which is fine. I don't mind the money part, because money is very easy in that game to get. But again, it falls into that thing, and if you upgrade the colony to like level 2, level 3, level 4. There's like 4 different things that you upgrade it to, but it just feels a little arbitrary.
Right.
And that's another part of the minor problem I have with the game.
Okay.
But other than that, Xenoblade Chronicles, I would recommend, if you have a new 3DS, play it on that because this is a perfect portable RPG.
Or a new 2DS, which just came out.
Oh, yeah, or a new 2DS.
Yeah, the new 2DS is cheaper.
Yeah, play that on one of those.
Yep.
Yeah, either one. It don't matter. You don't need to play in 3D.
Yeah, you don't need to play it on 3D. Okay, that's cool. So I want to kind of move on to this and then talk about Virtue's Last Reward because my girlfriend and I finished it recently. You know, because this is pretty important because, like, you know, over the past several years, I have been dabbling in the Zero Escape series. And, you know, we talked about 9 Hours, 9 Persons, 9 Doors a few months ago when we beat it. And now, you know, we're here to basically say, like, yeah, Virtue's Last Reward, we beat it. But we're still as confused as everybody else after the end of Virtue's Last Reward that, guess what? We got to play the next game, which is Zero Time Dilemma. Thankfully, it came out on PlayStation Vita and, you know, just so happens to have, you know, a PlayStation TV, so we can kind of continue it. Sadly, we're not going to wait for the PS4 version, but hey, you know, we're not nitpicky here. We just want to know what really happens. But you've never really played any of these, right? I mean, we talked about these. Yeah.
You've been telling me, fuck, man, you've been telling me about these games since maybe a little after we met.
Yeah. I mean, I want to say it came out, like, 999 came out, like, 2010 or something like that. And I think, like, Virtue's Last Reward came out in 2012, and that's when I actually started playing them. And I think that's when I actually told you about them. But in case people don't know, the Zero Escape series in general is a visual novel series that has a lot of puzzle elements in it. So essentially the idea is that let's backtrack. If you've ever gone to an escape room before in real life, and there's many escape rooms that have been popping up in the United States and, you know, some parts of the world as well. Hell, Final Fantasy XIV has a fucking escape room for some goddamn reason. I don't know why. Yeah, exactly. I'm like, I don't know why, but it has an escape room game. I
found one in my town.
Well, there you go. Like, it's basically that. It's your job is to basically escape that room, you know, whether you're with somebody else or yourself, and try to figure out, like, the mystery that was happening that night. That's the visual novel element of it, is figuring out, like, who to trust, who not to trust. It's almost like Saw, you know, but in anime form. You know?
That makes it better. You know how fucked up.
Yeah. You were saying something. I want to actually hear your entire thought process because my
God. When anime characters get violent, especially any anime character, there's kind of a cuteness to anime characters, right? Wouldn't you agree?
Yeah.
To a degree.
Yeah, sure.
And when anime characters get bloodied or something like that, it looks really fucked up. And I mean, I'm a guy who played Corpse Party, for God's sakes, and that was horrifying.
Oh, in this one and stuff, they're not depicted as kind of like that moe kind of art style that it's a lot more. I don't know the art style, but they're a little bit more realistic, not like too doughy-eyed, if you will. Like, they're a little bit more, you know, they're still kind of anime style, but very, like, realistic looking kind of thing. And, you know, and I think that and they kind of tie in some legends, some historical legends, myths, and theories to kind of legitimize the storyline of the game. And Virtue's Last Reward kind of continues that aspect of storytelling and stuff. Now, I wish, like, I can kind of tell you, like, the premise of it, but you're basically, you're a guy named Sigma, and you are one of the 8 other competitors in the Nonary game. And the Nonary game is a game played by 9 people whose sole goal is for one of them to escape the number 9 door. And typically, there are requirements to open the number 9 door. In this particular case, some people are actually paired with each other or solo by themselves, and they have a color, like a similar color, so they're kind of like a group. And their whole goal is to basically make their wristwatch, which has like some sort of number. You start with the number 3, go all the way up to 9. The way to increase the level or the number on your watch is to betray or ally yourself with your teammate. And this is done. Lord. Yeah, and this is done by blind vote. And if somebody's number drops down to 0 or negative, they die.
Like, how do they die? Like, violently?
Like, well, basically, like, there's a syringe that's actually built into the watch, and it just injects them with, you know, with fluid that kills them, with poison, basically.
Oh.
Yeah.
So that's the only way they die in it?
for the purposes of this review, yes.
Oh,
yeah. Now you get it, huh? Yeah,
I get you.
Yeah.
Okay.
So there are mysterious events that happen during it and stuff, and so the whole appeal of this is to kind of figure out what the hell is really going on, and that is the largest and biggest appeal of Zero Escape. Now, you know, I could talk about like how amazing the writing is, which it is. The voice acting has been really fantastic in this game, by the way. Both, you know, the Vita version and the the PS4 version, which is packed with, you know, with 999. But like really, like what I really admire about the Zero Escape series is how much storytelling it can do with so little. Right? Like, this isn't a game that to show off the power of the PS4 or the power of the Vita. This is a game where if you want something really suspenseful and mysterious and you love puzzles and mystery, of course, this is that game series to play. That being said, I would have to recommend highly for people to try to start with the Nonary games and buy that entire pack first. Start with 999 and then Virtue's Last Reward, and then finally get Zero Time Dilemma, because it is a continuing storyline. This is not like one of those games where you can just jump in Virtue's Last Reward and be like, okay, that's cool. Though, that being said, you know, you can start with Virtue's Last Reward, then go back to 999 to kind of understand what's going on, but I feel like you're going to get the most of it if you play it the proper way. Like how, you know, the order in which it was released.
And I will do that.
Yeah. That said, though, like, there's so many twists and turns that in Virtue's Last Reward, you know, that, you know, again, like, I feel like I can't help but stress that it does so much with so little. Like, there's a lot of stills, the 3D models in this one, actually, because there's, you know, in the first game, they actually did a lot of hand-drawn people. In this game, they have 3D models, but they don't move around a lot. You know, like, they have, like, very flat-colored characters, some texture work, but mostly flat-colored. There's a character named Clover that basically just smiles, even though she's declaring that somebody got killed. Which I feel which adds to the creepiness of the game, but also the unintended creepiness of it. You know, the voice acting doesn't help kind of mitigate this.
I made a decision. I think I'll pick these up when I get college money.
Sure.
This and the Dragon Ropa games I heard are pretty good.
I kind of want to pick those up too.
Yeah, we should pick those up.
Yeah, because I mean, I love that visual novels are now gaining some headway because adventure games have come back, right, in the West. Now it's time to kind of see like what the Japanese can offer in this genre again. And I feel like this is a genre that they could totally like own, you know, especially since Japanese storytelling is very unique from Western adventure game storytelling.
And I'm a big fan of Corpse Party. You know this. Mm-hmm. I love Corpse Party. I've been talking about those games for years.
Exactly.
And there's a 3DS version that came out last year that I want to pick up that has a couple of the games in it, including the first one. And I would classify it. I do need to give that one game that you got from Atlas for me more because it's a visual novel. Visual novel,
yeah. Utawari Rumono Mask of Truth, right?
Yeah, that fucking thing.
Yeah, you know the sequel is coming out like in a few months, right?
We'll see how I feel more about this one. Well, look, it's nothing against the game. It was just that at the time there's this other Atlas game that we all know and love.
Sure.
That was just, you know, so mind-blowingly good that I could not devote my attention to something. And again, this is not a knock on its presentation or anything. Well, it kind of is, I suppose. But its presentation was just not up to snuff to what I was playing at the moment.
Right, exactly. And, you know, in a way, you know, even though it's not really Atlas, I mean, Yakuza Kiwami is coming out this month, which another game that demands at least 40 hours of your time, right? Ugh, God. Yeah.
And then next January, we're getting Yakuza 6.
Yep, I know. 2017 continues with too many games. I mean, it's funny because that week, when Yakuza Kiwami comes out, only a few days before Uncharted Lost Legacy comes out as well.
Okay.
Yeah. And around the same time as Yakuza 0 comes out, or Yakuza Kiwami, I'm sorry, is Mario Rabbids Kingdom Battle as well. It's like they decided, hey, Yakuza is coming out that day. Let's all come out around that same fucking time. Fantastic.
Let's pack 2017 and destroy your wallet book, people.
Yeah. No kidding. And that's great, you know, like, but going back to Virtue's Last Reward, I mean, Zero Time Dilemma is probably coming out around that time on PS4 anyway, because why not, right? Why not? Yakuza.
Is it really? Or are you just being cynical?
I'm pretty sure it's coming out around that time.
Let's take a look. What is it? Zero Time Dilemma?
Yes, that's correct.
I'm looking it up for you. Let's see when its release date is.
Yeah, so while he's doing that, I'm going to give you guys like a score for Virtue's Last Reward. Again, don't expect this to be like a visual powerhouse or an audio powerhouse of a game. The voice acting is fantastic. The writing is great. You know, like the puzzles can be a little bit obscure, but after like about a puzzle or two, I think you'll get a feel for like how they are presenting the puzzles in the game. It is a very long game. We'll tell you now. Like I think we spent about 60 hours in a full playthrough of the game. Yes, it's fucking long. And it's because, you know, sometimes we have to redigest a lot of the information that the game gives us. But that being said, though, you know, really, I can't give this game, you know, a 5, mainly because I don't see how all the pieces are put together yet. You know, like, and I feel like that's just because I haven't played Zero Time Dilemma, and maybe what I'll do is I'll re-review 999 and VLR once we do finish Zero Time Dilemma. But that being said, I'm going to give this a 4 because it is a fantastic visual novel series, and if you never actually tried it, I highly recommend checking out the Nonary games on the PlayStation 4. If you want a really good deal out of it, I think they have it on sale on Amazon.com. So use our link, which is bit.ly/Amazon Backlog Battle. That's all one word. Once again, that is bit.ly/Amazon Backlog Battle. It is a fantastic game, especially like since you're getting 2 of them for the price of one game, and then you'll find out Zero Time Dilemma comes out on PS4, and you'll have the entire trilogy.
August 18th.
Okay, so
son of a bitch.
So about a couple of weeks before the 29th. Okay. I guess there's that.
Oh shit.
Yeah. Okay, so last thing I want to talk about is Overwatch, because last week, you know, I kind of said, like, yeah, I'm going to try out Doomfist and stuff and go back into Overwatch. Man, I am back into Overwatch full bore because I went in and watched, like, you know, like the Dragons, like, animated short again. And I don't know if you've seen it finally.
Oh, yeah, I saw. No, I think I saw it the time we were supposed to watch it.
Yeah. And, man, that gave me, like, I was like, I want to be a Hanzo main. I'm going to be the biggest asshole in the entire world by learning how to do Hanzo again. And because it's so inspiring. Like, you know, I watched a lot of videos today about, like, the GDC, you know, at GDC, like, how they design characters, how they created the world and stuff, and how they told stories in the world. And to me, like, the biggest surprise that I got was some of the levels that you and I know have changed. Like, not like dramatically in terms of design, like game design, but in terms of like their appearance. Like, for example, like the airport in Numbani, you know, there's a big fucking crack on the wall where the arrival and departure board is. Like, it used to just be a flat wall where people would just spray shit on there. But there's a huge crack there where I would assume where Orisa was before they actually took her out, and made her part of the lineup.
Oh,
you know,
shit.
of characters. Yeah, so it became kind of like a canonical change in the level design. You know, like just like how dragons actually affected the stage in Hanamura, where you can even see the remnants of the battle between Genji and Hanzo in that animated short. Like, it's actually represented in that stage, you know? And, you know, it's really crazy how they're continuing to do this and make it really interesting. But I know you guys don't want to really talk about, like, how the levels are designed. You're probably curious about Doomfist, which is the brand new character in Overwatch. And I'll tell you what, like, he is a very, very different character than the entire cast of Overwatch.
I need to pop in Overwatch.
Yeah. Doomfist is a straight-up melee frontline offensive guy. Because one of the things that's really cool about him is that every time you use any of his punch abilities, a passive effect called the best defense pops. And what best defense is every time you hit an opponent with any of your punch abilities. Now, melee doesn't count, I don't think. You get a temporary shield. In fact, if you do so much damage, you could probably get that shield all the way up to, I think, 400. Because I think he starts with like 250 health. So basically, like, they want you to go in there and actually punch the shit out of people. Now, he has 3 different punches. One is a straight-up dragon punch. There's no doubt what it is. It's straight up an uppercut. And if you uppercut somebody, you go up in the air with them. That's a dragon punch. He has a charge punch similar to, like, Terry Bogard. What is it? I don't even know the name of that fucking move. But
Fatal Fury.
No, Fatal Fury is like his super move. Like, it's the
dash. That's the game series he's from.
Well, I know, but like, what's the name of the move, not the series?
Oh, I don't fucking know.
Exactly. So nobody knows that, but he just basically like puts both of his hands in the air and then punches forward. I mean, Doomfist doesn't do that, but he punches forward and you can charge it because you can charge it to a point where you can actually probably one-shot somebody.
You're gonna get an email saying that.
Maybe I don't care. And then the last punch move he has is actually a conal ground pound, and anybody that gets hit by ground pound in that cone will be temporarily stunned. And his super actually like makes him completely unavailable on the ground, and you see like kind of like this 3/4 view of the map, and you see a reticle on the ground, and you can move that reticle to anybody's location, and then you hit X and you'll drop your meteor strike in that location. It's kind of cool. Now you're probably wondering, like, all right, well, does he have bullets? Yes, he has bullets in his knuckles. It's almost like a shotgun. He'll have 4 bullets. You can't reload them.
What?
You can't reload them. Also, they just return over time. So if you shoot all 4 of them, you gotta wait until all 4 of them are back.
It's a cooldown.
It is a cooldown, yes. It is completely a cooldown because the developers want you to utilize his punches more than his shooting.
Gotcha.
Because he is that kind of character. He's supposed to be a frontline guy. In fact, again, like his best defense, that's his passive ability, will only trigger if you punch somebody with his abilities. And that's crazy. Like, if you think about it, like a straight up, like, offensive frontline guy, it's kind of scary to play him. Thankfully, they actually were smart enough to create like an arcade mode where you could actually play as Doomfist 6 versus 6 in a kind of like a deathmatch mode, in a team deathmatch situation, so you can really learn how he plays. So that's really fucking cool of them to do. And as far as new modes that I've discovered, there is a standalone Capture the Flag match now in arcade mode that you can play. And in case people forgot what arcade mode is, if you win 3 matches in arcade mode, doesn't matter what kind of match it is, you get a loot box immediately. And you can do this 3 times per week. Okay, so basically if you win 9 times using arcade mode, you win 3 loot boxes immediately, no doubt about it. If it's your first time playing that mode, you immediately get a loot box. Like, let's say, Anthony, you've never played Capture the Flag. You're going to see a loot box there, icon on Capture the Flag, meaning if you win 1 Capture the Flag match, you get that loot box right away.
Oh, yeah, there's probably a bunch of modes I haven't played.
Exactly, and that's the fun part about Overwatch. And yes, they have made it so that they can balance Overwatch successfully. So, for example, if you're thinking like you could be Tracer, go all the way to the enemy's flag, pick it up, and then rewind, that doesn't work that way because obviously that would be OP. So there's kind of like a debuff that applies to you where you can't use specific abilities that much, because, it's a way to be fair. Also, when you pick up a flag, there is a cooldown that you have to wait on the spot where the flag is before you can actually pick it up. So you actually have to defend yourself. You can't just run in, grab the flag, and get out. No, you have to wait until you successfully pick up the flag. And these small changes to the CTF formula are actually super fun. It's the most fun I've had in Overwatch in a long time. Of course, quick play is still there. But I think the most important thing, Anthony, and I think you're absolutely going to love this, is that they've completely minimized the amount of duplicates that you get in loot boxes. So you won't get the same fucking sticker anymore. You won't get the same, like, like all that shit, like, that you don't really care about that you already have. You're gonna be ensured that you're gonna get new stuff, and that's the thing that I like about this new update. Yeah. So, obviously, Orisa was also released before this, and so many other characters. But there's such a variety of maps, in not just like Team Deathmatch, CTF. And there's the Oasis map, the Lunar Colony map in the quick play mode, that Overwatch, we talk about games that don't feel anything like what they were before. Overwatch feels familiar still, but it's grown tremendously over the past year. And it's like I said earlier, I'm full on ahead in this. Like I'm back in. It's going to be part of like my gaming rotation again. It's pretty fucking exciting.
I will give it a try soon, but
it's so fun. Like Doomfist, I think will be a character that you're gonna love, because you're kind of like a frontliner guy. If you could figure out how to play as Doomfist and just kind of combo his abilities, you're gonna love him.
Oh yeah, he sounds cool.
Yeah, and
inspired by fighting games.
Yeah, did you hear that anywhere, or did you?
No, I picked it up when you were describing him.
Yeah, it's because the developers pretty much said like they were inspired by fighting games when making Doomfist. So
that's cool.
I mean, his name is Doomfist, so that's why like he doesn't shoot around a lot. It's all about his fists, Like it would suck if Doomfist just shoots around with his knuckle bullets. You know what I mean?
Oh,
yeah. I mean, it's great, and I can't wait to play more Overwatch. Really, like it's kind of like just checking out like everything that they've done, like makes me really excited to pick it up again and play it. So, I might even pick it up like and play it right after this podcast ends. So,
Well, unfortunately, I got other things to do. So
yeah. Well, we'll figure out if there's any time that we both can play. But anyways, unless you have anything else to say, Anthony, I think this is a pretty good time to kind of wrap up the show, don't you think?
I don't have anything to say.
Okay, so, all right, well, that said, remember that you can find all this and so much more on the Backlog Battle Podcast at mybacklogbattle.tv. Remember to basically check it out every single time, because we sometimes post some really cool stuff, like the interview that I have with the localization team in the House of Fata Morgana. That's a really good visual novel you guys should check out. Also, we post like screenshots of the announcement of Dragon Quest 11 arriving in the United States in 2018. We got some screenshots there. Also, if you want to check out all 182 episodes of the podcast, even the ones that were released before that, before we were called Backlog Battle Podcast, you can check it out, all of that, at mybacklogbattle.tv. And of course, actually, we are forgetting one thing. I think this is going to be a simple thing. Podcast questions. And I'm going to pick like a really simple one so that we can kind of at least address this.
Okay,
this is by Eric. He asks, what is your favorite in-game weapon in any game?
Dear Lord.
Yeah.
You know what? That's actually easier than I thought. I love a lot of weapons, but I'm going to go with something old school and simple.
Okay.
The motherfucking spreader gun from Contra.
Oh, man. That's pretty good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I love that fucking gun.
Yeah. I can only think, I can only think of something recent, sadly. And at first I was going to pick like some, Mega Man-esque weapon, but then like I keep coming back to this one because I really truly enjoy what you could do to people when you're using this weapon, and that's May's frost gun. Because you shoot anybody with that frost gun, and they just stare at you until you headshot them, and they can't
it's a bullshit weapon. But still.
It's great. You should try May. She's a really...
I have.
Okay.
I like her.
Yeah. Oh,
it is an Eskimo girl.
She's so much fun. All right. Well, again, hopefully we answered your question, Eric. Thank you very much for joining us, guys. Remember, visit us at mybacklogbattle.tv. We're on YouTube at youtube.com/mybacklogbattle, Twitter and Facebook at mybacklogbattle. And yeah, we might have some really good stuff for you guys on the website. And don't forget, email us at podcast@mybacklogbattle.tv for any of these questions. It could be anything, like irrelevant, relevant, video gaming, or what have you. So until next week, we'll see you guys later. Happy gaming.